Oh, you guys are doing a great job singing. Doesn't it feel good to sing those songs? Love it. I just love listening to them and hearing everybody sing. What a blessing. We're in Genesis 20 tonight. Genesis chapter 20. Looking at the life of Abraham. And we saw last time we were together, we saw how Lot was in trouble and how Sodom, God had destroyed Sodom. And now we shifted back here to Genesis chapter 20 for Abraham's continual journey. And shifts back to he is the main character. So in Genesis chapter 20, verse 1, it says, "And Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country, and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur, and sojourned in Gerar." So the question arises as we go, he gets himself in a little bit of trouble again. The question arises as to why Abraham would leave without God's command. The answer could be anything. By the way, I just turned the heat up, so if you're cold, I'm sorry, it shut off or something, but I turned it back up. So, yeah, you're welcome. The question may have arisen as to why he journeyed. It doesn't give us the answer, but whenever, and again, when God told them, "You sit tight in the land, unless I tell you differently," every time they stepped outside of those boundaries, they got in a little bit of trouble. Okay? Devotionally, what does that mean? Right? Stay within the boundaries that God tells us. Okay? When you step outside of those boundaries, He wants you to dwell in certain boundaries, and when you step outside of those boundaries, you're going to get yourself in trouble. So, all right, I feel it. It's coming. The heat's coming. So, verse 2 says, "And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, She is my sister, and Abimelech king of Gerar sent and took Sarah." And again, this isn't the first time this happened. We saw it before. It's human nature to get into a cycle and get in trouble, then get out of trouble and not learn a lesson from it. And now he's going to do the same thing. He's scared because apparently Sarah is a very beautiful woman, and he thinks that when he goes into these strange countries that they're going to kill him to get her. And so when he goes and he says, "No, she's my sister." Okay? Well, it still gets him in trouble, you know. I mean, it's you know, he's afraid, and fear will cause people to lie. And then it says, but God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, "Behold, thou art but a dead man for the woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife." So once again, God intervenes and comes to Abimelech and says, "You're a dead man because you have a woman that doesn't belong to you." Okay? And plain as can be right there, isn't it? My, how far we've come. My, how far we've come. It's just incredible. But Abimelech, who still has a sense of morality, I guess, says, "But Abimelech had not come near her. And he said, Lord, wilt thou slay also a righteous nation?" I didn't do anything, he says. "Said he not unto me, She is my sister? And she herself said, He is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocency of my hands have I done this." All right, so he appeals to the Lord, and in people with integrity, right, who are putting to shame the believer here. Okay, this guy has some sort of integrity, even though he might be a heathen person. And again, we see that play out at times when the believer is the bad testimony and the unbeliever actually shows integrity, right? So that can happen, all right? And that's just, it's backward. It ought not to be that way, but it can be. And then verse 6, it says, "And God said unto him in a dream, Yea, I know that thou didst this in the integrity of thy heart, for I also withheld thee from sinning against" who? "Me." I withheld thee from sinning against me. Therefore suffered I thee not to what? Isn't that interesting? Not to touch her. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 7. Now this isn't popular, folks. I didn't say that it was easy to live by, but this isn't popular, what I'm going to say right here. All right, 1 Corinthians chapter 7. And verse 1. Now concerning the things whereof you wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Okay, so they're obviously writing to Paul and asking questions, and very simply he says, if a man outside of marriage, if a man doesn't touch a woman, it's a good thing. Because we all know what happens outside of marriage when a man touches a woman, right? So, if I were to draw it up, and you had a couple who's not married, and they're interested in each other, my perfect plan would be, don't touch each other. Now, I know it's 21st century. I know some of you are saying you're out of your mind. I get it. I'm just saying, in a perfect plan, according to this, okay, according to 1 Corinthians 7, and according to what God said to Abimelech, I withheld you from sinning against me, so I didn't let you touch her. Okay? That is not, I'm going to tell you right now, that's not popular at 27 Elvira Street. That's my address. But if you want me to draw it up for you, you can't get in trouble that way. That's the bottom line. You can't get in trouble. All right? Well, we only hold hands. Okay. Then what? Because you won't be content at only holding hands. Well, we only put our arms around each other. Okay. Then what? You get the picture. Okay? And again, that's my opinion. Whether that's going to work for everybody or practical for everybody, or everybody's got to draw those boundaries, those lines. Okay? Could we at least agree? Could we at least agree, though, that sex outside the marriage is sin? Could we agree with that? I mean, if you don't agree with that, something's wrong. Okay? It wasn't intended for outside of the marriage. That wasn't God's plan. Now today, anything goes when the whistle blows. Okay? I understand that. That's the society we live in. That's the culture we're in. But it's very anti-God. Okay? Back to our text says, I withheld thee from sinning against me, therefore suffered I thee not to touch her. Okay? Bottom line, very simple. Very simple. All right, so aim high, young people. Don't go with the standards of the world. Go with the standards that the Lord has set forth. Okay? A low aim never hit a high mark. We've heard that for a long time. Okay? Have a high mark to shoot for. All right, so that's the predicament that Abraham has gotten himself and his wife in here. And now Abimelech, kind of an innocent third party. Verse 7, now therefore restore the man his wife, for he is a prophet. And he shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live. And if thou restore her not, know that thou shalt surely die, thou and all that are thine. So this is the first occurrence of the word prophet in the Bible. It's reference to Abraham here. It's mentioned in the context with prayer, that the prophet would pray. But the office of the prophet, especially here in the Old Testament, was not a popular position at all. They had some hard things that they had to do. They had some strange things that they had to do in the name of being a prophet, didn't they? They had to run around naked at times, marry prostitutes, lose wives, be swallowed by a whale, be made fun of, be decapitated, and crucified. There are some 49 prophets named in the Bible. Their job was to warn of God's judgment and make known His word. I'm sure glad that I don't have to be that type of prophet and have to do some of those crazy things. Okay? But a New Testament prophet now is, the word of prophecy is the Bible. When we preach the word of God, we prophesy. Okay? That's what it comes down to now. Okay? And there's not going to be any visions for me. I'm the prophet. This is what I think is going to happen. We should go with the middle grade bathroom partitions. You think that's a joke. That's what happens in churches today. I kid you not. I'm a prophet. I know a pastor not too far from this church in the city. A charismatic church. That stuff goes to your head. It's bad enough when, hey, preacher, that was a great message. Well, thank you. Or, man, the Spirit of God was on you. You're anointed. And I just try to remember who I really am. Okay? But imagine if we were into the visions and signs and wonders and I could prophesy and I really believed that. Oh, this is what's, brother, I see this for you. Never negative. I wonder why. And then these guys get puffed up. And sure enough, this guy who had a big church said that he was a special prophet. And he's in kind of a class by himself. He went a little cuckoo. I'm glad that the only way that I'm a prophet is I can tell you what the Word says, not what I say. Let's keep it at that, right? The Old Testament prophet was a unique individual. The New Testament prophet is not the same. It's not the same. Verse number 8, it says, Therefore Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told all these things in their ears, and the men were sore afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said unto him, What hast thou done unto us? What have I offended thee, that thou hast brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin? Thou hast done deeds unto me that ought not to be done. And that is a strong rebuke from I'm going to say a non-believer. I don't know, a heathen. That's a strong rebuke. And he says, What have I done to you? How have I offended you? Now, this is another lesson we can learn from Abimelech. Apparently, there's some lessons to learn from him. And one of them is how he handled this. He said, now remember, he's already been told this is God's prophet. He's already been told you'll be a dead man. But it didn't stop him from saying, you sinned. He did the right thing in the confrontation, I guess is what I'm saying. He said, what have I done to deserve this? Why how have I offended you? And of course the answer is he really didn't. But let's look at the principle in Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter number 5. And let's see, verse 23. Matthew 5:23. And then we'll go to Matthew 18. I'm getting there. All right, Matthew 5:23. The principle, therefore if thou bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hath aught against thee, leave there thy gift before the altar, and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother, and then come and offer thy gift. The principle is this. The principle is there's an offense, there's a problem, there's an issue between two people. And before you get too spiritual, resolve the issue. Okay? Same thing in chapter 18 of Matthew. I'm sure you're familiar with that whole principle of if somebody offends you, go face to face. Okay? Matthew 18, verse 15. Matthew 18:15 says, moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother. Now that if you have two parties that will cooperate in that principle, you've got something going on. Okay? Where if you go and just say to them, listen, I'm a little bit offended here, and here's why. Okay? And they say, well, okay, well, I'm really sorry. Maybe either I didn't mean it, or I did mean it, but I was wrong, and I'm sorry. And then you can keep that, and you can take care of that. Okay? The problem that we have seems to me to be we're upset at the person, but we don't want to tell them that. And so up goes the wall, right? And I have to tell you, as a pastor, the most frustrating thing to me in trying to minister to people, I know when there's a wall up with people, but they won't tell me. Okay? There's a family now, and they're a real quiet family, and you might not even know who they are. They stopped coming. They were coming. They stopped coming. At one time, I would get returns on my emails. Now I don't. Okay, I don't know where the problem is. I called. I've emailed several times. I had somebody else email. I don't know what the problem is. I know that there's a problem. You don't just shut down communication. Now that problem might be on their end, but the problem might be on our end. I just don't know what it is. Boy, is that frustrating. I have to tell you, I would rather they said, you know what? You said something that offended us from the pulpit, and here's what, or we don't like your direction of your ministry. I would rather that we knew something than to have to play the cat and mouse game. I say that to you to say it's better. It's not easy to do sometimes, but it's better to clear the air to get it done. Just get it done, okay? So, if you come to me and I'm a preacher, man, you offended me by that. If I'm worth anything of my testimony, I will say, I didn't see it that way, or I'm sorry, or yes, I did it on purpose, or no, I didn't do it on purpose. Whatever the case is, but we got to get that thing taken care of, okay? That's the principle of bringing the gift to the altar. Is effectively worship the Lord and have His favor, we've got to take care of things within the brethren, okay? We got to take care of things. What I don't want to happen in our early days, like has happened to me in ministries, is you see somebody coming and you run the other way. You know what I mean? And I don't even mean like where you're just trying to avoid somebody's going to talk your ear off, or somebody's, and you don't have the time for that. That's not what I'm talking about like that. But I mean, like you don't like them. Just this week, I stopped real quick to grab a drink. I sat down. It was quiet. I sat down in this little restaurant, and I'm contemplating what some of the things I had to do and this and that. And I get up, and there's hardly anybody in the place. And I get up, and there's a guy that I'm like, I said to myself, oh no. I didn't want to be bothered. Does that ever happen to you? Come on. I said, oh no. I was busted. Eye contact. So you do the superficial. Oh, hey, yeah, So we're talking, talking. What are you going to do? I just didn't want to talk, and I didn't want to. It was nobody here, and it was, and they're just a unique individual. When the conversation was over, and I thought it was a pretty light conversation, and talked about what's going on here, and I finally was like, I really have to go. I really did. I'm like, I really got to go. So we walk out the parking lot, and he goes, brother, I want you to know, his lip quivers, you really encouraged me today by this conversation. I needed it. Right? Like kicking myself, right? And I said, oh, thank you. I said, it was good to see you. It really was. Now, I say all that. Sometimes there's a blessing, right? A hidden blessing. There was a lesson. That was a lesson. Okay? Sometimes we avoid people for the wrong reason. Okay? And there was no, I'm not talking that there was an offense, but there was not an offense, but I'm just saying, sometimes we start hightailing it the other way because for whatever reason, and sometimes we miss the blessing. And if there was an offense with that person, and there wasn't, then I really should have said, hey, we need to talk for a minute. Right? So as far as our church, and I've said this before, and I mean it, I feel a good spirit in here. I do. I think the place buzzes. I feel a good spirit. It's pretty positive. When I'm not going to say if, when the time comes and you've been offended or you have offended, try to get that thing done as quickly as you can. Okay? Hey, I'm not sure, maybe I'm not. You got to have some diplomacy, and you got to be a little humble about it, but I'm not sure what may have happened here, but this is kind of, my take on it, and, I want to make sure that we're okay, and, that kind of a thing. So what I don't want to see is us getting caught up in the, I don't like you, you don't like me, don't talk to her, don't talk to him. We don't, I don't want that. Okay? That's baby stuff. And again, because we're in a position where we're still new, we can do that. Let's clean that up, okay? If that's you. And if it's me, listen. I'm all ears, man. Over the years, and it wasn't always like this, over the years, this got real thick. The skin got real thick as far as not easily offended, okay? It used to be I would get easily offended when it had to do with the ministry, Not anymore. So, you can lay it on me, all right? Be nice. Be nice. But let's chat, all right, before it goes too far. That's the thing. You don't want it to go too far, okay? So, I say all that. I think Abimelech did the right thing here by saying, what did I do to deserve this? And he really put the burden back on him and, said that, called it a great sin and all that. And Abraham's rebuked by a lost man, Wouldn't be the first time that happened to anybody. All right, verse 10 says, and Abimelech said unto Abraham, what sawest thou that thou hast done this thing? And continues to call him out. What did you see that you would do this to me? All right. What influenced you to do this? And it's interesting, he goes, after that, what did you see? Because it does start, a lot of that does start in the eye gate, What did you see? And I think Jesus said something, if your eye is single, then you're all right. I'm paraphrasing, you're all right on the inside, and if your eye is evil, you're not. So he's saying, what did you see? What did you see? Verse 11, and Abraham said, because what? Uh-oh. How much does this get us in trouble? Because I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place. Well, after all, was it? Apparently. Surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. All right, and so when I think it's usually not good, this can go back to, this is somewhat related to this. I thought the fear of God was not in this place. You know what? Today's funeral, in my mind, the fear of God's not in this place. Oh, should I say the H word? You did. Should I call it hell? Or should I just say separation from God? You know what I mean? So, you're like, surely the fear of God is not in this place. Okay. How do I know that? I don't know that. And I could see some people, in spite of some of them, I see some people going like this. Or I could see some people that I know are lost. They were dialed in. I thought they wouldn't listen. Now listen, I've had some funerals where I literally got the hook. That is one of those, and this is dangerous when you have it. This is one of those. Could you do a funeral for us? My second cousins, neighbors, friends, all this disconnect. Well, I suppose, and then you sit down and you try to go over and talk to people about what's going to be said. And I would tell them, this is exactly what I'm going to do. Exactly what I'm going to say. And one time I'm finishing up the funeral, the gospel presentation, and this lady gets up, and she had enough. She was the primary relative, and she got up, and I could see her coming. It wasn't this close, and I could see her coming. And so I finished up real quick, held up the ultimate question booklet, and said, and if you have any other questions, you see me from one of these, I'd really like to get this to you. And she got up there. Oh, this concludes the service for today. Well, boy, The funeral director was unhappy with her. And this guy was a biker. And I mean, surely the fear of God is not in this place. After the service, I've got bikers coming up to me with tears in their eyes, asking me for an Ultimate Questions booklet. I don't know. I thought the fear of God was not in that place. It was. In spite of what happened to me with that lady, there were a lot of people that, and by the way, what she did really worked to the Lord's advantage, to the cause's advantage, because people were like, oh, how rude that was. Hey, I'll take one of those, So, when you come into one of the things is when I know the person well and I'm comfortable and I can speak on their behalf, it's easy. When you don't know the person well, it's tough. It is tough. But I've learned you've got to be careful to say, I thought surely the fear of God is not in this place. I don't know. I do not know. And looks can deceive, okay? So Abraham thought that was part of the problem. He thought they were going to kill him. Verse 12, and yet indeed she is my sister. She's the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. Okay, still you're still lied. Okay, I mean you can't cover your tracks by saying you're telling a white lie or half truth. Verse 13, it came to pass when God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said unto her, this is the kindness which thou shalt show unto me at every place whither we shall come. Say of me, he is my brother. All right, so, however, when God caused him to leave his place, there's a saying that the will of God will not lead you where the grace of God cannot keep you. Okay? So if God did cause you to wander from that place, or God does call you places, you're all right. If he's called you, you'll be fine. All right? You'll be fine. And if God called Abraham, which he did, he should not have worried about this. And Abimelech took sheep and oxen and men servants and women servants and gave them unto Abraham, and restored him Sarah his wife. And Abimelech said, behold, my land is before thee, dwell where it pleaseth thee. And unto Sarah he said, behold, I have given thy brother, sarcasm, 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is to thee a covering of the eyes unto all that are with thee, and with all other. Thus she was reproved. So what he's saying to her is, you also had a part in this. You were at fault as well. So he's rebuking her. So Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children. For the Lord had fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. And again, the bottom line there would be, right, wrong, or indifferent, whatever Abraham did, the bottom line there is, don't mess with God's anointed. That's the bottom line. Don't mess with people that God has called. And in the end, I've seen this over the years. In the end, you lose. Be careful that when we say that person is out of the will of God, or that be careful of that. So if God is calling somebody to do something, has a purpose for that, don't get in the way. In other words, don't get in the way. So, all right, let me stop there then, and